In light of the heavily anticipated release of the FNAF movie, I wanted to talk about the entire history of the games and the Five Nights at Freddy's main series as a celebration of our finally reaching this monumental end goal. After pretty much 10 years of waiting every night, I talked about my personal favorite entry in the series, FNAF 2, in a video that's now a year old, which is crazy to me, but anyway, in that video I covered the pre-release of the game, its plot, and the gameplay itself. So I wanted to go through and do the same for the entire series. Like I mentioned in that video, I don't know the lore like the back of my hand, just the most basic stuff you need to enjoy the game. But I thought, just for fun, I would dedicate a portion to explaining my personal understanding of the lore, which will be based on everything that isn't the novels, the movie, or any game theory videos. This video will contain spoilers for the story of multiple FNAF games, but will not rely too heavily on gameplay spoilers. Let's just get into it. I tried to find a way around this, but unfortunately, to talk about the game, I need to first discuss how it came to be, which means I have to talk about the game's creator, Scott Cawthon. Creator of many great Christian games and direct-to-video films you've probably never heard of, or have only heard of because some of the films are lost media and one of his games could have its message interpreted as being anti-abortion, the creator of Five Nights at Freddy's had his fair share of experience in the years leading up to his development of the game. Both avenues allowed him to perfect his skills in 3D modeling, and because of this, we can see the iconic look of FNAF games in ones that he made that aren't even related to the series. A prime example of this is the game that started it all, the Christian value-based family-friendly Chipper & Sons Lumber Co., which predominantly featured beavers alongside other animals, modeled and animated in Scott's signature style, which some people claimed was both frightening and oddly reminiscent of animatronic animals, hence planting the seeds of FNAF. At first, he took his criticism in the same manner that a whiny baby might, claiming that it led him to a crisis of faith, and I'm just reading that particular line off of the wiki. I've never heard anyone say that in my life, let alone over criticism about a video game. I'll try to stop being so mean. Anyway, after some ruminating on this criticism, Cawthon came to the conclusion that he should embrace the look of his modeling and pursue a genuine horror game, which would become the first installation in the FNAF series, the namesake Five Nights at Freddy's. From my knowledge, earlier Five Nights at Freddy's games, the first one included, were created with very limited resources and by Scott Cawthon on his own, with testing being done through himself, his sons, and friends willing to submit themselves to a work-in-progress version of a horror game, which I think would be even scarier than the finished version of something. Development took a relatively short 6 months, utilizing consumer and advanced programs to create the visuals and to code the game, and paid sound effects from sales websites that distributed them. I don't think this entry has as many teasers leading up to release, if there were any at all, and if there were, they aren't very well documented in a solid timeline, from what I can find. Nonetheless, there is a trailer, which I will play here. And come August 8th of 2014, Five Nights at Freddy's was officially completed and released, to very positive and complimentary reviews calling it terrifying, just what Scott was after. The gameplay of Five Nights at Freddy's is simple, yet heart-pounding given its plot. You play as a security guard who has been hired for the night shift at a local family entertainment center called Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, inspired by Chuck E. Cheese's. Your job as the night guard has you stay in an office where you'll monitor a set of cameras placed all throughout the restaurant. You're instructed to keep an eye on the animatronics at the location, who are able to move around freely at night to keep their mechanical components in working order. The 4 animatronics, a purple bunny named Bonnie, yes, he is purple and not blue, a yellow chicken named Chica, a red fox named Foxy, or Foxy the Pirate, and Freddy Fazbear himself, a brown bear, will roam the restaurant and will be able to be seen on these cameras by the player. Each animatronic has a different pattern of movement in terms of where they'll go in the restaurant. You soon find that their goal is to find their way to you and kill you, and the only way to keep them out is by tracking their location at all times and strategically closing a set of mechanical doors, one on either side of the office, doing so until the night ends at 6 a.m. You might be thinking, oh okay, I can just shut myself up in here and wait the night out. And you couldn't be more wrong, because the game has an answer for this in the form of a power reserve reserve that operates your cameras and doors that you must keep above zero, or your game will end with the power going out and Freddy coming to jump scare you. Like I said, there are variations to how each animatronic will explore the restaurant and how fast they'll get to you because of that, with the only real different pattern of movement being Foxy's, who can run very quickly from his home in Pirate's Cove to your office. Like the game suggests, you'll have 5 levels to beat, as well as a secret 6th, which get harder and harder the further you get, with the animatronic's AI becoming more aggressive and therefore more costly of your power to keep at bay. Another thing to be scared of in Five Nights at Freddy's is the appearance of Golden Freddy, who is a golden version of Freddy that spawns as a result of a random event of a poster seen by one of the cameras, changing to show a close-up of his face. He appears as a yellow eyeless version of Freddy that, after being seen, can spawn in your office once you switch your camera off. You must quickly bring your monitor back up to avoid being jump scared by Golden Freddy, who will end your game. Like I mentioned before, finishing the 5 nights will show you an ending with a paycheck made out to Mike Schmidt, and finishing the 6th night will show you the same paycheck with a little additional money for overtime. While the gameplay of this entry is the most simple the series would have ever had, it was addictive, and the difficulty of later levels would keep the gameplay as interesting as it could. Other than this, however, the game has some dark lore to offer to keep you playing. To find out more about the story of the series, the information presented in this game is my favorite in the series for the simplicity of the plot and the mystery and fear that there is in the unknowns of it. The lack of over-explanation, in my opinion, is what makes the storyline we do get in this entry all the more impactful. The player's name is Mike Schmidt, as can be read on the check you receive at the end of the 5 nights, and is taking this job as the night guard with very little instruction from an ex-guard by way of recorded messages on your telephone, a new one each night. He tells Mike that if any of the animatronics get to your office, they will inadvertently kill you by forcefully shoving you into an animatronic suit, mistaking you for a mechanical skeleton without its aesthetics on. This skeleton is known as an endoskeleton in universe, though I have been told that this isn't the biblically accurate term for the component. Nonetheless, for the sake of understanding and comprehension, I will continue to call them this for both my purposes in FNAF videos and in future animatronics videos, because I think it helps people picture what I'm talking about better, because so many people are now familiar with them because of FNAF's easy to comprehend word for them. Think of it as the Photoshop or dumpster of animatronics. Basic things covered, the player can also discover elements of the story that aren't fed to them. In a newspaper posted on the wall of the restaurant seen through one of the cameras, where we get most of the game's underlying story from, it details an event in which a man murdered 5 children in the restaurant after luring them into a back room, and was promptly arrested. However, the bodies of these children were never found. I'm pretty sure these change every night, I'm not quite sure, but I do know that there are 4 different versions of these posters, one of which reports the children as missing, and iterates that the company's image has been somewhat tarnished by this event. One other important detail found in these posters is that the animatronics were reported by patrons to have a strange odor to them, and appeared to have blood and mucus in their eye sockets and mouths. Last but not least, the most important piece of history in the FNAF timeline, this game is the first mention of the bite of 87, where the phone guy says,
they used to be allowed to walk around during the day too, but then there was the bite of 87. Yeah. It's amazing that the human body can live without the frontal lobe, you know?
The messages for the 4th and 5th nights are just as strange, and don't necessarily give us any solid information, but rather give us more questions about the goings-on of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, mainly because of its coverage by high-profile gaming YouTubers, most prominently Markiplier.
Was that the bite of 87?
Five Nights at Freddy's was a smash hit among the horror game community, and gained massive popularity online, attracting a loyal, and somewhat cringe for the time, fandom. This is one of the first times I interacted with a piece of media that normies would call cringe, and I will say this is something I quickly realized while making my way through middle school, though I've never once regretted it. I may have hit it for the time that it was embarrassing to admit it, but I've always been a massive fan of Five Nights at Freddy's, and I probably always will be. Since I've already made an entire video dedicated to FNAF 2, I'll kind of just repeat most of what I said in that video, and rewrite what parts I could sum up better. Not because I'm too lazy to rewrite all of it, but because my voiceover in that video is so stale and stiff. The iconic game Five Nights at Freddy's, most times abbreviated as FNAF or 5NAF, would become such a hit in the jump scare horror. I feel like this is a good opportunity for a redo. After the excitement over the first entry in the FNAF series came to a boiling point, teasers for a second game started to drop as soon as a month after the original's release. On September 12th of 2014, a teaser image was uploaded to Scott Cawthon's website that showed a seemingly more detailed yet tattered Freddy animatronic, with the number 2 and the words Grand Reopening written beside him, accompanied by a slated date of 2015, meaning the game was planned to release by the next year. With the now confirmed second game on the way, fans Fans were excited to see more content from the series creator and later orphan father. On September 28th, a more teasy teaser was released, and it remains true when I say that this teaser image either ruined my life or bettered it. It depicted two bunny animatronics sitting back to back, almost encapsulated in full darkness, a theme that the teasers for the game seem to all have. The animatronic on the left appears to be Bonnie from the first game, albeit with no face, seeming to be gutted out, evident from the visible bare wiring and mechanics left behind. The animatronic on the right was a sky blue and white rabbit that was more smooth in texture and appeared to have a hard plastic outside shell rather than the fabricy material covering the ones in FNAF 1. They are both accompanied by the words, "something borrowed, something new." This teaser sent fans into wild speculation, with the best functioning theory at the time being that the animatronics from the first games were dismantled or borrowed from in order to build new animatronics for a new Freddy's location. On October 7th, a third teaser image dropped on Scott's website, which only strengthened this theory, showing two animatronics partially hidden behind a purple curtain. The original red foxy animatronic on the left, and a white and pink fox with the same plastic texture as the bunny on the right. A sign in front of the curtain had only the number 2 on it. Otherwise, the image was again shrouded in darkness. At this point, fans had begun to throw around the idea that these dark, empty spaces were deliberate, not only for atmospheric or aesthetic reasons, but because there might be more to them. Thus began the practice of raising the brightness of the teasers, a habit that would lead the fandom to the discovery of new details lying in the darkness for both this game and many future entries. I even remember doing this myself before the game came out because I was so excited for it. On October 15th, a fourth image was released, featuring what appeared to be the point of view of someone peering through the eye holes of some kind of animal mask, with a snout and nose just beyond the eyes, presumed to be a bear mask, given these details. An eerie-looking red foxy animatronic can be seen through the right eye hole. The words "no place to run" and "exactly one place to hide" are written across the top of the teaser. 6 days later, on October 21st, the first official trailer for the game was revealed. I'm not gonna make the mistake of playing the trailer unmuted here because I like money. This trailer finally confirmed the theory that the first game's animatronics had been dismantled and recycled into new assets. It also showed off the first few looks at the gameplay, already doing away with the doors protecting you from the animatronics. Even only been having shown this small snippet of gameplay, this sequel appeared to be much harder and scarier than its predecessor. Sometime after this trailer was released, Scott announced that the game's demo would be available, with 2 nights being able to be played, with some YouTubers being given early access to a 3rd night in the demo. By November 9th, the final teaser was posted. The image was entirely black, with only a danger symbol and the label for Camera 11 visible. The only teaser with its focus completely obstructed by darkness, brightening it revealed the rest of the camera labels. This 11th camera focused in on what was called the prize corner. In the view of this camera was another tall and skinny plasticky creature with a white face and a black body. On November 11th of 2014, FNAF 2 was surprisingly released ahead of schedule on PC, with a mobile Android port releasing by the 15th, and one for iOS on the 20th. I bought the mobile version when it came out, and I have since purchased the Switch version and have proudly finished neither of them. Differences between this game and the first one become more apparent as you play through the first night. The game opens up exactly like the first, with a newspaper advertisement for a job opening at the grand reopening of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, proving that this is a reopening rather than a first opening. The first phone message explains some changes made to the improved location and the animatronics within it, telling us that the new animatronics, those shiny plastic ones, have been built to assure more safety with facial recognition systems to pinpoint any potential threats. That their heightened technology now requires the player to remotely wind up a music box to keep a mysterious animatronic at bay, and that you're given a Freddy Fazbear mask to confuse the animatronic's facial recognition into thinking you're just another animatronic. The player's office now has one large and doorless hallway down the middle of the room, and an open vent on either side of your desk with a light mounted above it. Luckily, you're given a flashlight to light up the center hallway. This game is the first game in the series to implement specific methods of keeping each animatronic away. This made the gameplay exponentially harder than the gameplay of the first. The new animatronics are finally able to be seen in full, with plasticky outer shells, more cartoony faces, and more detail overall. Since they weren't initially referred to as toys, the fandom just kinda dubbed them as the new version of whatever animatronic from FNAF 1 each toy was made to emulate. In my original video on FNAF 2, I tried to refer to the animatronics as their fan-given names. But to make things more comprehensible, I'll be referring to everyone as their official names this time around. Toy Freddy, Toy Bonnie, Toy Chica, and the Mangle can be kept out of your office by putting on your mask once they appear in your hallway or vents. Toy Freddy only appears in your central hallway, Toy Bonnie only appears in your right vent, and Toy Chica can appear in either the main hallway or the left vent. The Mangle will appear in the hallway or the left vent, but will not attack right away. Instead, she'll hang out on your ceiling and wait until you're distracted enough by your cameras or the music box, but you'll be able to hear him drawing closer based on the constant static she emits. Withered Freddy, Withered Bonnie, and Withered Chica can all also be kept away by the mask, but only after they've come into your office. Withered Freddy will come in through your hallway, Withered Bonnie will come in through the left vent and the hallway, and Withered Chica will come in through the right vent. Withered Foxy will come in through your hallway, and you must keep him away by flashing him with your flashlight a few times. Balloon Boy, a new name in the series, will come into your office through the left vent and will keep your flashlight from working if you don't put your mask on when he appears. You'll be able to hear him coming by counting how many times his childlike voice cue plays, either a hi, hello, or a laugh. On the fourth sound cue, he will be in your vent and you can put the mask on to keep him out. The other new character to the series is the marionette or puppet, who stays in the music box and will only come out if you fail to keep it wound. Otherwise, it will come into your office and kill you with no way of stopping it. Golden Freddy also makes an appearance in this game and can be seen in your hallway or immediately in your office. He appears as a ghostly head in your hallway, meaning you must go and wind the music box. But if he's in his full form in your office, you have to put on your mask before he can jump scare you. Shadowy versions of Toy Bonnie and Freddy, named Shadow Bonnie and Shadow Freddy respectively, can also be seen in this game, but will not impact you in any way. This game is also the first one in the Five Nights at Freddy's series to have short cinematics, or cutscenes, worked into the game. One when you start your game, one when you finish the second night, one when you finish the third night, and the last being seen anytime after you finish night 4. In these cutscenes, you watch the restaurant through Freddy's eyes, seeing Bonnie and Chica on either side of you, and the tables of the restaurant just ahead of you. The cutscenes do vary, with some notable details being the appearance of Golden Freddy and the puppet. The last big difference in this game is the inclusion of the mini-games, which can be triggered randomly after you get a game over. There are 4 different classic arcade-styled mini-games, each with a different objective, which their nicknames are based off of. In the game nicknamed Save Them, you play as Freddy with the goal of following the marionette through the restaurant. You also play as Freddy in Take Cake to the Children, where you do just that, distributing cake between children at a party. In Give Gifts, Give Life, you play as the marionette and give gifts to 4 children sat in a room. Lastly, in Foxy Go Go Go, you play as Foxy with the goal of coming out of Pirate's Cove to a room full of children. Since these games are random events and not seen very often, they are the main vessel by which the story in this entry is delivered. In Save Them, you can see deceased bodies lining the walls of the rooms that Freddy is exploring, with the word Save Them being spelled out in the background noise of the game. Take Cake to the Children is the first or most notable appearance of the Purple Guy, a purple sprite that appears to be responsible for hurting children, as seen in this game, where he kills a child just outside of the playable area of the minigame. Give Gifts, Give Life shows similar grayed out deceased bodies, to which you give presents, and then the masks of the original animatronics. Lastly, in Foxy Go Go Go, once you come to the room twice, on the third time, the children in the room will be deceased, and the purple guy will be standing there. Finishing this game will show you a paycheck made out to someone named Jeremy Fitzgerald, but finishing through the additional 6th night will give you another piece of information, unlike the first game. In this ending, you see the same paycheck, with the additional overtime payment like FNAF 1, but you will also see a newspaper that reads, "After being open only a few short weeks, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is closing its doors." The new animatronics will be scrapped due to possible malfunctions. However, the original characters are being kept in hopes of a possible reorganization of the company, followed by a comment from the CEO of Fazbear Entertainment stating that they hope there will be another opportunity for a reopening, even if it's on a smaller budget. The imagery in the minigames definitely drums up some new questions, and it's obvious that they were made with the idea of deepening the lore in mind, which they did successfully, rocketing the game's true story into even further mystery, along with the help of the cutscenes and the endings. I'm still gonna support my stance that while I do appreciate this game for being an amazing sequel that got just about as good of a rating and response as the first, and for bringing a lot of joy and excitement into my life both leading up to and after its release, I'm kind of dissatisfied that this was the game to take the series into this territory. I know that the first entry had its little sprinklings of deeper story, but I've always just felt more like chalking the animatronics' odd behavior up to malfunction rather than possession. I honestly think that the notion of malfunctioning animatronics being out to get you is much scarier than any ghost story. I still prefer to see the games in that point of view, even with the lore being pretty common knowledge nowadays. Now, moving on, I have to talk about my personal least favorite game in the series, FNAF 3. As was the general theme relating to the speed at which FNAF games were made, it only took a few more months after the release of FNAF 2 before we started to see images from the upcoming third game. On December 6th of 2014, Scott uploaded a rather unassuming image to his website, the word offline in white text on a black background. Using what we were able to learn from the teasers for FNAF 2, brightening or otherwise enhancing the image revealed a yellow number 3 in the bottom right corner of the image. Another new tactic was used in the pre-release for this game, that being the hiding of vague clues in the source code of the teasers. These aren't as important as the teasers themselves are in my opinion, but for this image, the word soon and the phrase Five Nights at Freddy's 30 years later, only one, can be located in the source code. This made fans even more intrigued, having a few details being given to them fairly outright like that, and hearing that the game would be set 30 years after the previous one, or rather assumed to be 30 years after the last entry. On January 2nd of 2015, another image was posted, this time of a scary looking worn down fabric textured animatronic face with glowing white eyes hiding in the darkness. It is accompanied by faint text that reads, "I am still here." Brightening the image didn't do much outside of giving you a better look at the color of the animatronic, which appeared to be a very dirty yellow, almost green, with red in what would likely be its endoskeleton, but it also revealed a second appearance of a much smaller number 3 in the bottom right corner of the picture. The source code for the image reveals the words, "I remain." A third teaser image was uploaded to Scott's website, showing a box full of the toy animatronics parts and a number 3 being focused on by a spotlight. Enhancing the image showed a strange looking decaying animatronic on the right side of the box, presumably the same one from the second teaser. After this, the official trailer for the game was revealed on January 26th of 2015. The trailer still doesn't give us very much, but makes constant references to him, a mystery entity, who may possibly be the ragged animatronic featured in the teasers and this trailer, who we get a better look at here. The fourth teaser isn't really interesting, all it is the game's map on a black background that, when enhanced, just reveals some kind of additional space in the map, illustrated by solid white lines. The fifth teaser is a little more eye-catching and shows Balloon Boy in what looks like a deteriorated state, similar to the animatronic predominantly featured in the teasers and trailer. Brightening it gives us a better look at him. In the final teaser, we see both Foxy and Chica in a similar condition, along with the words, "It's all in your mind." Shortly after the release of this teaser, a demo was provided to certain YouTubers to play through on March 1st of 2015. With the full game being made available the day afterward. So this game is far more complicated than either of its predecessors in terms of both story and gameplay, and because of that I'm going to attempt to cover everything as quickly as possible so we can move on. You play as a mystery person who has been hired to watch over the building of Fazbear's Fright, a special attraction that is held inside Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and based on the in-universe events surrounding it. You're hired to act as the night guard in the week before the event's opening, while more things are uncovered from the decaying restaurant's ruins to use in the attraction. Some of the things that end up being found over the course of the week include informative recorded tapes in the same vein as the phone messages from the first 2 games, and you get to learn about things like a set of hidden rooms within the restaurant, and an incident involving the malfunction of something called Springlock suits, which are mascot costumes that can be used both as animatronics and walk-around characters. You also get more information about Springtrap, the destroyed-looking animatronic we see in the trailer. As you might assume, this animatronic will pursue you while you're on shift, with your only tools to keep him at bay being a network of cameras focused on the rooms and a set of air vents respectively. Again, there are no traditional doors in this game, but you'll be able to seal off the vents to keep him out and use sound cues to lead him away. The only caveat to this, however, is that phantom versions of the previous 2 games' animatronics will be able to jump scare you at random intervals and interrupt one or both of these systems, therefore allowing Springtrap to come get you and end your game. Any tampering with the ventilation can also cause you to hallucinate more animatronics or become blind for a few seconds. Between the audio, cameras, and ventilation, the player will need to keep up on the status of each, and reboot them when they malfunction at random, or again when it is caused by the phantom animatronics. Unlike the other 2 games, completing the nights of this one will give you stars for each level of completion as follows. You'll get 1 star for finishing the 5 nights, another for finishing all of the minigames, which I will talk about, another star for completing the harder Nightmare Night, and a 4th star for beating the game with the aggressive cheat on, which can be accessed from a cheat menu unlocked by beating the Nightmare Night. This cheat will do what it sounds like, making the AI of all the animatronics more aggressive, therefore making the game harder to beat. As for the aforementioned minigames, there is 1 playable minigame for every night in the main 5 nights that you complete, and another set pertaining to the order you'll be able to complete them in. For example, you'll only be able to play Chica's Party on night 3. The lore of the game in general is once again delivered primarily by these minigames. In the first game, you play as Freddy and follow a purple Freddy to another room until he can follow no longer, and will eventually be found and destroyed by the purple guy from the minigames in FNAF 2. The same thing happens for the next 3 nights, with the only difference being that you're playing as Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy in that order. The final night's minigame will have you playing as a crying child who will follow the same path as the animatronics, but will be able to enter the room that all the animatronics couldn't. Inside, you'll find 4 more crying children, keeping the purple guy from leaving the room. He'll eventually make his way into a yellow rabbit suit inside the room, where he will unfortunately be crushed by its failing spring locks, as mentioned in the tapes earlier in the game. The second set of minigames are accessed by clicking on various things seen throughout the cameras. Balloon Boy's Air Adventure is the first minigame and can be played on any night by clicking on the drawing of Balloon Boy seen through camera 8. Mangle's Quest can be played on night 2 and is played by clicking on the buttons in the arcade machine seen through camera 7. Chica's Party, like I mentioned, can be played on night 3 and is played by clicking on the grayscale cupcakes that can be seen through cameras 2, 3, 4, and 6. The game will only start once you've clicked on all 4 of the cupcakes. Stage L1 can be played on night 4 by clicking on a set of wall tiles in the office in a specific sequence, and the glitch minigame can be played on night 5 by clicking on a figurine of Shadow Bonnie that will be sitting on your desk. Finally, the last minigame, Happiest Day, can be played on any night by double-clicking on the puppet drawing seen through camera 3. In this game's case, it's easier for me to talk about the lore being detailed as a whole, rather than breaking them down by where you can find the instances of said story, which will appear predominantly in these minigames. All you need to know about the minigames is that they each have multiple endings. The most optimal ending, and what is considerably the truest ending, is the one you get by locating a cake in any way in each of the 5 bonus minigames. Getting this ending for the first 4 minigames will trigger an ending in the Happiest Day minigame, where you, playing as a child, bring cake to a table where 4 more children are sitting, wearing the masks of the 4 main animatronics, and a 6th wearing a golden Freddy mask. All of the children will then disappear, and 6 balloons will rise to the top of the screen while the children's masks fall down. A 5th unique star will be added to your screen to signify that you've unlocked this ending. Finishing the game as a whole will give you either a good or bad ending, with an additional ending for the 6th night that shows a newspaper clipping explaining that the attraction has burned down, with Springtrap hiding in the dark of the image. Moving on, in the pattern of things becoming darker and darker as the series progressed, the final mainline entry into Five Nights at Freddy's promised to be the scariest. This is another game in the series that I don't care for too much, even though it does solidify some of the lore of the series' story. FNAF 4, whose first teaser depicted here planned it to be the last entry, or the final chapter as it says, has the scariest look to it at face value. What makes FNAF creepy to me, personally, is the fact that the animatronics usually aren't scary themselves. It's just the environment they're in and the fact that they're after you that makes them scarier. And I know how skibbity, toilet, Garten, Bam Bam, Poppy Playtime that sounds to me to say, but it's true. I mean, FNAF is considered mascot horror, and there's a long history of family-friendly or otherwise innocent things being given a creepy twist to make them scary. I don't know why people want to act like this is something new and cringe when my generation grew up on lost episode creepypastas. Anyway, I can't find an exact timeline for when teasers for this game started to be uploaded to Scott's website, but I do know that it was fairly soon after the release of 3, so they started sometime in the middle of 2015. This teaser shows a very raggedy and sharp-toothed Freddy with the words "The Final Chapter" and a release date of October 31st, 2015. Brightening the image reveals additional text reading "Nightmare." This teaser was followed by some more fairly similar teasers, one for each of the last 4 animatronics, with Bonnie's reading "Was It Me" and the word "Nightmare" hidden in the darkness, and the exact same for Chica, both of whom were just as worn down and spooky looking as Freddy. The final in the set showed Foxy with the words "or me" and "out of order" hidden over the top. A 5th teaser shows a purple hat and bow tie on the floor, focused on by a spotlight. Enhancing the image reveals the words "property of FRER." The next teaser shows a black Freddy animatronic from the neck down, about to its stomach, which has a purple bow tie like the one in the previous trailer. Brightening the image reveals the words "or was it me." The last teaser for the game is much different and shows a smaller version of Springtrap sitting in a chair under a window letting some light in, with the words "terrible things come in small packages." The game was moved up from its October release to August, and then moved once again. A trailer would come out for the game on July 13th of 2015. The game surprisingly released on July 23rd, with a demo being provided to YouTubers 2 days prior. Again, since it's a game I don't care to talk about, I will try to make this segment on this entry as brief as I can. Instead of playing in a restaurant, or a long abandoned one at that, you're instead playing inside something more familiar, the bedroom of a young child. At this point, fans had been asking for a more free-roam FNAF game, to explore the unique and mysterious settings the series places you in. The answer to this was to have you playing as a small child in their room, who would need to physically walk between a few different areas of the room to keep the animatronics out. You aren't necessarily in charge of moving your character, it's still point and click, and between 2 doors on either side of the room, your closet, and your bed, there are 4 places you'll have to monitor closely. Lacking any cameras, you'll need to instead rely on sounds to figure out where an animatronic is, and how you'll deal with them. You also won't have any way to close the door and leave it closed. You'll need to physically be by a door to keep it closed yourself, meaning that if you choose to hold the left door closed, you'll have to worry about something coming into your room through the closet or the right-hand door. You'll also need to strategically flash your flashlight at these animatronics, if they're far enough away to be scared by the light. For example, if Bonnie is at the end of the hallway on the left, and you don't hear any breathing outside the door, you should light the hallway up. If you do hear breathing, you'll need to immediately close the door. The same thing goes for Chica, who will come in from the right hallway. Foxy will do relatively the same thing, but the only catch is that he'll let himself in through an unguarded door, and then hide in your closet, where you'll need to keep an eye on him. Once that happens, you'll need to close the closet door on him until he disappears, and a Foxy plush takes his place. To keep Freddy out, you'll need to monitor your bed, which will fill up with little scary versions of Freddy. Once 3 have spawned on your bed, you'll be jump scared by him. To avoid this, all you have to do is flash them with your flashlight until they go away. Somewhat of a minigame in between nights, you'll be able to play a game where you'll have to lure that smaller version of Springtrap, which is called Plush Trap, to a certain spot on the floor without letting him get close enough to jump scare you. On the 5th night of the game, things change by quite a bit. Instead of being hunted down by all 4 animatronics, you'll instead have to face off against one, a golden-looking bear with a purple hat and bow tie named Fredbear. He'll kind of attack in the same pattern of all the other animatronics, and you'll need to be fast about flashing your light on him and closing the door once you see him. You'll also need to listen to his footsteps and for his laugh, which will tell you where he is. If he laughs, he'll be in your closet or on your bed, meaning you'll need to close the door on the one in the closet and shine a light on the one in your bed. Stars make another appearance in this game, one for beating all 5 nights, one for beating the extra 6th night, another for beating the extra 7th night, and another for beating the extra 8th night, which is the hardest difficulty. Beating this will unlock additional cheats and challenges that you can use to acquire the 4 stars that those offer. There are also multiple traditional minigames in this entry that detail the events regarding the player character, a little boy. These minigames do a more direct job of telling us the story behind them. You don't need to know much about the gameplay of these minigames because the more important details are more arcade-style cutscenes than anything, but we start with the understanding that all of them take place before the day of a party. In the first minigame, we see this small boy playing with his plush toys, which appear as the animatronics in the game, Fredbear included. He seems to choose Fredbear as his imaginary friend, comforting him after he gets picked on by his friends and older brother in the 4 minigames following that. In these minigames, we're shown that this little boy's friends, and predominantly his older brother, bully him very often. And this bullying is usually centered around what appears to be the Freddy's restaurant. The 6th minigame, which is one of the most infamous in the entire series, depicts the young boy at the party where his bullies and his brother are wearing the masks of the 4 animatronics. They're messing around in what looks to be a not-so-terrifying Fredbear animatronic, and his bullies lift him up to the animatronic to further torment him, where his head ends up inside Fredbear's mouth, and all of a sudden...
Was that the bite of 87?
It was not the bite of 87, but I will talk about that later. The final minigame shows a fairly simple scene where the boy is once again in a dark room, surrounded by his plush toys. We see someone apologize to the boy, and then this Fredbear plush tells him, "I will put you back together." This minigame ends with the plushes fading away and the sound of a heart monitor flatlining being heard. So, for all intents and purposes, this is essentially the end of the main 4 Five Nights at Freddy's games, or what I deem the numbered games. After this, the last couple of games in the main story have subtitles to them, or just different names in some way. Considering that I'm not going to talk about FNAF World and that I'm going to save that for another time, the next game in the FNAF franchise as a whole has the funniest general announcement I think I've ever seen for a Five Nights at Freddy's game. In April of 2016, a series of teasers began to be uploaded to Scott's website, most of which are just cryptic images of some white lines on a black background, occasionally throwing in some letters. They aren't really that important. Eventually it got to the official announcement, a teaser image that showed a very scary looking clown animatronic in darkness, with the words sister location and the phrase, "There was never just one." They really said, if the Five Nights at Freddy's tetralogy is so good, why isn't there a Five Nights at Freddy's tetralogy too? A second teaser showing the same animatronic followed, with the game's apparent title, sister location, and a different phrase, this time reading, "Everyone please stay in your seats." The next 2 teasers just show off different characters with different phrases, one showing another clown-looking animatronic with lots of exposed metal parts, accompanied by the phrase, "There's a little of me in every body." The one following showed a group of small scary baby doll animatronics with the phrase, "Don't hold it against us." The next one in the sequence showed a couple of glowing buttons with the words, "Get back on your stage, now," which just read really funnily to me for some reason. And then the game was cancelled due to leaks. This was revealed to be trolling. Then the game was given an official release date of October 7th of 2016. An official trailer was made public on May 21st of the same year. The last few teasers show the second clown's face away from his body, and then another after that shows the map layout for the game. The release would finally arrive by October 7th, and once again, you play as an employee at this new sister location, Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental, a place where animatronics are created, improved, and shown off to private parties, and must arrive at the location for 5 nights in order to do maintenance work. Unlike other games, you're given a few locations within the attraction to point and click in between to do so. This also means that your goal kind of changes every night. This game is also the first to have cast-wide voice acting across all the animatronics, in addition to the voices guiding you through each night. To kinda just sum things up without spoiling the specifics of too much, you'll need to execute certain tasks to keep the animatronics calm and keep them from killing you. Circus Baby, a red and white clown animatronic featured in the first few teasers, is pretty much the main animatronic in the game. She's joined by Ballora, a shiny blue and white ballerina animatronic, Funtime Foxy, who is exact to Mangle in his pink and white coloration, though looks considerably more well kept, and Funtime Freddy, who has the same coloration as Funtime Foxy. He also has a puppet on his right hand named Bonbon, who kinda just looks like Bonnie got shrunk. You might also see Ennard, the second clown featured in the teasers. Over time, as explained by both the assistant overhead voice, presumably an AI or something like that, as well as from an eerie disembodied voice later on, you'll learn more about the location and these animatronics, such as what they are built to do and what goal they achieve in relation to guests. One detail that becomes super important later on is that Baby was built with an ice cream scooper in her stomach, where she can dispense ice cream to kids. Nothing too sinister at face value, but of course. In the game, you'll do things such as using lights to make sure animatronics are in the correct place, using the buttons seen in the teasers to administer shocks to them to get them back to their respective stages. The animatronics also get respective parts of the game, whether it's a level or while you move between locations, where you'll need to interact with them one-on-one. For example, to get through Ballora Gallery safely, you'll need to go as slow as possible, listening to her music playing to keep track of where she is. If her music is loud, that means she is close enough to jump scare and kill you. When interacting with the breakers in the room where Funtime Freddy is located, you'll need to periodically and strategically play audio cues to trick him into thinking nobody else is in the room with him. While moving through Funtime Auditorium, you'll need to walk carefully through and make sure to flash your flashlight a few times as you do. If you can see Funtime Foxy standing in front of you, you'll need to flash him until he disappears. Since this game plays through like a story rather than dedicated levels, I can't really comfortably explain what specifics you'll go through without just rehashing the game word for word, so I'll let you play for yourself and find out what happens. Beating the game just unlocks some cool behind the scenes stuff and bonus features from what I can tell. What I can talk about though are the minigames, which are just as important in this game as they always have been. The sole minigame in this entry comes about at random after you die, like how they would in FNAF 2. In the minigame, you play a circus baby, who will deliver cupcakes to children, and at the end of the game, will instead deliver ice cream to one little girl, if the game is played correctly, but will also end in this little girl being killed by Baby. It's also important to know that after every night, the player will be shown at home, and from the same point of view as you have during your shift, you'll be able to watch TV and eat some popcorn. These little cutscenes are also important in a minor way, as are the minigame style cutscenes played after the nights you beat in hard mode. There are 7 cutscenes which feature a man in a purple shirt walking down a street, his neighbors waving to him. Nothing too exciting happens in the first 2 minigames, but by the third, the man starts to take on a strange appearance, his skin having turned more dull and then an even darker shade by the 4th, his eyes also having turned black. The people around him also seem to notice these changes and appear confused. By the 5th cutscene, he appears almost purple with white pupils in his black eyes, and by the 6th, he is completely purple and kind of hobbling around, dragging himself rather than walking confidently. The people around him obviously take notice that something is wrong. In the 7th and final cutscene, he walks past all of the people, and once he's out of sight, something starts happening to him, and a white or metallic substance escapes from his body and into the sewer. His body collapses, and after a moment or two, the phrase, "you won't die," is repeated until his body returns to life. Eyes are spotted in the sewer before the cutscene fades to black. For my understanding, these cutscenes aren't too important, but I thought I might mention them anyway. The endings for the game itself give us some insight into what these cutscenes mean. In the true ending, the player is brought to a room in the building used to destroy broken and unneeded animatronics by smashing the outside aesthetics of the animatronic itself and extracting the more valuable and reusable endoskeletons. He is placed into the machine that does this, named the Scooper, and is forcefully, well, scooped. That's literally how it gets put, I'm not making that up. However, the final scene you see is the player character in his bathroom, looking into his mirror and seeing 2 glowing eyes staring back at him. So it's not immediately clear that he died, or if he did, how this is happening. The fake ending is similar and shows the player at home as usual, but also shows Ennard hiding in the corner of his living room. For the final game I'll be talking about in this video, I'll kind of just sum it all up in one go, because it's pretty simple and only relates to the lore in a single way that's important in my eyes. This game is kind of unassuming and was released in a similarly unassuming way, with a lack of real teasers being made. This is Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator. I think that's the right wording, I wrote it down wrong in the script. And like you might have guessed, it plays like a simulator game where you can customize and manage your own restaurant under the name of the Fazbear Entertainment Incorporated Company. You'll first get a chance to buy decorations, games, and entertainment for your restaurant, and place them on the floor. Your goal in doing this is to raise your Faz points, thus raising the quality of your restaurant. Buying and using certain items in your restaurant will raise your level in one or more of 4 areas: health and safety, entertainment, atmosphere, extra revenue, and sometimes liability risk. Liability risk will, as it sounds like, make it so your restaurant is at a higher risk of being sued, which will cost you precious money. Little side note, you're also given the chance to playtest some of your games and equipment, some of those being arcade machines. Playing these arcade machines does give you some points, but you're also able to unlock some secret mini games within them. There are 3 of these games, one depicting a yellow man coming home and finding that his son has run away, another showing a crying girl or maybe a woman with spring bunnies to the right of her, and another that shows the puppet finding the dead body of a girl behind a nondescript restaurant. Once you've customized your pizzeria to your liking for the day, you'll then need to do some work at your computer ordering supplies for the restaurant, printing flyers, and getting custodial services done remotely. Your office is placed conveniently between 2 large vents that you'll need to keep on in order to stay cool and be able to breathe freely. You're given 2 buttons to shut your noisy computer or the equally noisy vents off, though the latter will cause you to suffocate and pass out, thus failing the night. You're also given 3 options to make sure you're alone in the office, or to deter anything within the outside vents if there is something there. You can choose to run either motion detection, play an audio cue to distract things, or run the ventilation silently, but you have to choose one as they cannot all be used at the same time. Once you finish all of your tasks, you can end your night and move on to the next. You might be wondering, why would I need protection from anything in the first place? There shouldn't be anything lurking in my brand new pizzeria, surely. Well, you would be wrong in that statement, of course, considering you're playing the way that I assume you're playing. Between nights, you'll need to decide whether or not to salvage broken and rundown animatronics you find in the alley near your pizzeria. The benefit to doing so is that you'll get a large chunk of money for bringing in animatronics, but you're also allowed to turn them down if you just want to continue into the next day. If you decide to salvage whatever animatronic the game is offering to you, you'll need to sit it down at a table, play a set of audio prompts for it, and observe its reactions, marking the results on a checklist. These animatronics will be what serves as a threat to you when you're in your office. There are 4 animatronics in the game: Scrap Baby, who is a scrap version of Circus Baby; Molten Freddy, an equally worn down version of a Freddy animatronic, which I will elaborate on later; Scrap Trap, who is in the same condition but appears as Spring Trap; and Lefty, who is the most well kept, and appears as a plasticky black Freddy animatronic with red embellishments. They all act the exact same in terms of crawling into your office, and can be kept out by using the sound cues and periodically shutting down your computer or the ventilation to create less noise. To complete Pizzeria Simulator, you simply need to live through 6 days and nights, your actions during which will determine what ending you get. These endings are based on how well you improved your pizzeria, how many times customers sued you, and how many of the 4 animatronics you chose to salvage or not. The majority will just give you the same end screen, which is just a certificate explaining the conditions your restaurant was subjected to, variable by what I listed before, but one ending is more important, and is considered to be the real ending for the game. Instead of explaining it now, I'll move into the lore portion of the video and wrap things up the way that FNAF itself can be wrapped up with this ending. Like I have my own way of viewing FNAF 2, I also preferably have my own understanding of the timeline and lore of Five Nights at Freddy's, which comes from the games themselves. The only thing from the novels and things similar that I use in my understanding are the names of our protagonists, antagonists, and characters affected by the actions of those. I won't be referring to any of the children possessing the animatronics by name, other than those who I need to mention for clarity. My understanding is also not heavily influenced by Game Theory's theory videos, as I haven't seen any of those out of respect for my sanity, and is instead supported by Freddy Pop Collector's video on the entire timeline. Not only is it short, it is concise. It doesn't claim to be a solution for the lore in its entirety the way that I think Game Theory videos do, and it pretty much faithfully goes up to the 6th game, which I have also done. It's also old, so it means that security breach isn't factored in there. I'm not believing William Afton is alive on a floppy disk. The video in question also relies very little on the novels for any major plot, which I have also done, and choose to do whenever I talk about Five Nights at Freddy's. This segment is not a solution to the lore. It's just what I personally think think is the most easily understandable way to comprehend it, of course assisted by what the games say explicitly and by the video I mentioned before. I will also make it clear when I am referring to information gained outside of the game itself, and any motivations for characters will be of my own conclusion based on the facts I present, and may not be reflective of any discussed in the books. The very first event in my timeline is the opening of the first restaurant in the Freddy's chain, which isn't a Freddy's per se, but an early variation on it, much like how Chuck E. Cheese's started out as Chuck E. Cheese's Pizza Time Theater. At this restaurant is the first appearance of both Fredbear and the Springtrap animatronic before it becomes the version we see in FNAF 3, where the phone guy refers to this animatronic as Spring Bonnie, based on the fact that both of these animatronics are dated looking and have a yellow coloration whereas nobody else other than Golden Freddy has. They can be grouped on that merit alone in my opinion, as design choice in the FNAF games when it relates to the animatronics is very important and very closely linked. Some minor details supporting this can be found in the novels, but for this timeline and at this point, I've decided that all you need to know is that this early establishment is opened by William Afton and Henry Emily, both of whom are versed in business and creating animatronics. The experience with this first restaurant encourages William to branch out and create a second location where he can experiment with new animatronics and the future of animatronic entertainment. Now, William Afton, for one reason or another, is a twisted man, whose goals are always for his own pleasure or benefit. When creating the animatronics for circus babies, he makes them with advanced robotics and entertainment features like I mentioned before with Baby's ice cream mechanism, but he also designs them to be a danger to children, either by accident or by intention. The minigame in which Baby kills a little girl is evidence of this, but this event is even more important to the lore than just that. This little girl is William Afton's daughter Elizabeth. Again, this name was referenced from the books. This second location is pretty much what Circus Baby's entertainment and rental would be if it were a full-blown restaurant, and it's kind of alluded to that this is the case, as the Steam description for sister location mentions a Circus Baby's Pizza World, which is not where the game itself takes place. At some point during the operation of this place, an accident occurs where Elizabeth is killed by the very thing Afton created, again, shown in the minigame where Baby kills a little girl. It's assumed now that his daughter takes possession of Baby, because in a small detail in the minigame, Baby's eyes are blue and Elizabeth's are green, but Baby's eyes in the actual game are green. This gets confirmed in another way later on, but I don't want to spoil it now. The next game in the timeline is FNAF 4. Since we see Fredbear in the game itself, and in the minigames and styled cutscenes, it's safe to say that this location is still open at the time that FNAF 4 is taking place. Now, I have the benefit of knowing that the entire gameplay was recently confirmed to be a dream or a hallucination or something like that, but that doesn't change what it means to the lore in my opinion. The child featured in the minigames and cutscenes of FNAF 4 is William's youngest son, and the bully with the foxy mask is this child's older brother, Michael Afton. The story pretty much goes as the minigames pointed out, that the younger boy is bullied endlessly by his brother, which then results in his death. It's assumed that the gameplay is the forced nightmares of the boy in the days leading up to his death. At the same time, Emily is hard at work on his own brand expansions, and by suggestion of a minigame in FNAF 4, he has helped create a cartoon based on Fredbear and characters not depicted in the restaurant, which are Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy. This becomes important after the fact of William's son dying, because this death at the first location directly caused its closure. After this, in a struggle to repair the image of the business, another unrelated franchise is brought to life. That of Fazbear Entertainment and Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, to be specific. This location is launched with a new brand in mind, using new animatronics of Freddy, Bonnie, Foxy, and Chica to use as entertainment. 2 different murders take place both within and outside of this location, with one of those deaths being the one we see in the minigames of FNAF 2. We know this death isn't really connected to the second set of murders, the ones mentioned in FNAF 1, because those murders took place within the restaurant itself, and were carried out by a man in a mascot costume, not out in the open by a random man like what happens in the minigame. Some assets made by Afton and others by Emily are being used at this location, and while we don't know for sure what animatronics are here, we know who has to be there in order to make the rest of the confirmed story make sense. How I see it is that the original 4, Golden Freddy, and the puppet are all being used at this location. This isolated death and the 5 reported deaths take place, and this location is unfortunately shut down. The isolated murder is the murder of Henry Emily's daughter. Perhaps for revenge over letting the company fail, or because Fredbear, one of Henry's creations, killed his other child, or for both reasons, William Afton murders his daughter outside of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, and she possesses the puppet, or rather the puppet seeks her out, as can be seen in one of the minigames in Pizzeria Simulator. Assuming that the same dead body outside in this minigame is the same child that gets killed in the minigame in FNAF 2, this means that her spirit is now possessing the puppet. Again, this is pretty much confirmed in another way, but not that I can bring up yet. The other 5 murders occur at the hands of William Afton, they're stuffed into the animatronics, and the location is closed due to the poor hygiene this spawns. So William gets what he wants in destroying the name of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, out of what I'm assuming to be spite over his and Emily's previous attempts failing so miserably, and leading to the loss of his children. But against what he might wish for, you'll find that Fazbear Entertainment is highly determined to keep the characters alive, and so a remodeling of the franchise is in order. Now comes FNAF 2. The toys are built based on the old animatronics, and the old animatronics themselves are kept to use for parts. For further evidence that FNAF 2 takes place immediately after these deaths and the closure of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, the toys are given facial recognition systems to avoid anything bad happening to any kids again. However, as is referenced in the phone calls in FNAF 2, some weird events start occurring by the 4th night. First, we're told that there's an ongoing investigation going on in the restaurant, that the animatronics are acting as if someone has tampered with them, and then we're told that the animatronics are acting up, and that a day shift position has become available, presumably because it was found that this day shift employee was doing the tampering. By night 6, the message reveals that the building is on complete lockdown, and that someone in a yellow mascot suit may be the culprit behind the weird things going on, resulting in the player character, the pretty much inconsequential Jeremy Fitzgerald, to be moved to the day shift after the final night, where he is bit by Mangle in what is now known as the famous Bite of 87. And after this, FNAF 1 takes place, where the original animatronics are instead fixed up and used in this location. I know that does beg the question, how would it be that these animatronics were worked on at all without someone finding the remains inside of them? But I don't have an answer to it. I tried every way I could think of to get around that, but I think I'm just gonna chalk it up to an oversight on Scott's part, or the very slim chance that, by then, the bodies would have fully decomposed and possibly fallen out of the animatronics. That, or shady old Fazbear Entertainment just didn't want to bring it up again and cause any unnecessary attention on the bad parts of what went on with the name. At the same time though, it kind of seems like Fazbear Entertainment is taking advantage of the attention that the murders brought, because not only does the phone guy in FNAF 2 say that mentions of the murders or discussions on them are a ploy to make a quick buck, which we know Fazbear Entertainment wouldn't pass up, but newspapers in reference to the murders themselves are hung up in the restaurant in FNAF 1. In FNAF 3, the whole plot is that the restaurant has burned down, and that they're holding a horror attraction based on the scary happenings of this location, so if that's not evidence to Fazbear Entertainment taking advantage of the murders, I don't know what is. The minigames of FNAF 3 show us that William Afton, the purple guy, returns to this location to destroy the animatronics and further destroy the brand's future, but in doing so, releases the spirits trapped within the suits, and he is forced into the spring bodysuit, where the spring locks fail and crush him to death. After William Afton's death, with nobody to look after the weird hole he's got going on under his house where he's been toying with animatronics, we're brought to Sister Location, where a man is hired to do maintenance on the remaining animatronics. In reality, this man is none other than Michael Afton, who is sent to go and preserve Baby, therefore preserving his sister's soul trapped inside. It's here that Michael is used as a vessel for all of the animatronics to escape. As we know, the scooper is used to remove the endoskeletons from animatronics to be used to fuse together. At the end of Sister Location, all of the animatronics are scooped and combined to form Ennard, who then scoops Michael and uses his skin to escape the hole where William left them, to basically rot away forever. This is confirmed by the true ending to the game, where Michael is seen at home with glowing eyes, and in the cutscenes where he turns purple. In a set of blueprints on your computer in Sister Location, you are told that the scooper has the secondary purpose of injecting Remnant into its victims, which is basically just multiple souls that can be injected into a living person to grant them immortality, or at the very least invincibility, as Remnant does have a weakness to fire, all of which is detailed in the novels. I kind of elect to ignore this as well, because I think that William Afton going after revenge and being just a weird child murderer is like a lot more believable than him just wanting immortality, which he canonically wants. I just choose to ignore that. However, the whole Remnant thing does give some explanation to how both Michael and William are able to survive the things they go through. From here, FNAF 3 takes place, where William Afton is proven to have lived at the location in FNAF 2, where he had been stuck for all of those years, now being used as a horror attraction. You play as Michael, who, at the end of the game, decides it's finally time to rid the world of his father, and burns the place to the ground in an effort to finally kill him. But we know from the special end screen for the game that he survives this fire. Because of the fire, the spirits trapped there are finally allowed to pass on, because they think that William Afton finally got his. But this brings us to Pizzeria Simulator, where everything in William Afton's story really comes to a close, at least in my eyes. You run your pizzeria in Pizzeria Simulator as a trap for the remaining animatronics who have yet to be freed, and for William Afton. Springtrap, Lefty, who contains the puppet, Molten Freddy, and Scrap Baby, both of whom have separated from Ennard, return to this pizzeria to find some kind of home or something like that, or just to further torment whoever's unlucky enough to work there, and continue the pain-filled name of Freddy's. The end gives us closure to pretty much everything in the story. Henry Emily returns and assists Michael in destroying Afton for good, and in releasing the spirits of both of their daughters. This is the piece of evidence that I was talking about that confirms both that Emily's daughter is the one killed outside of Freddy's and is possessing the puppet, and that Elizabeth is possessing Baby. Instead of talking about the cutscene, I'll just play it out. because it's become another very important piece to the lore, and in my eyes, is the best finality to the games and to this video that we can get.
Connection terminated. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Elizabeth, if you still even remember that name, but I'm afraid you've been misinformed. You are not here to receive a gift, nor have you been called here by the individual you assume, although you have indeed been called. You have all been called here, into a labyrinth of sounds and smells, misdirection, and misfortune. A labyrinth with no exit, a maze with no prize. You don't even realize that you are trapped. Your lust for blood has driven you in endless circles, chasing the cries of children in some unseen chamber, always seeming so near, yet somehow out of reach. But you will never find them. None of you will. This is where your story ends. And to you, my brave volunteer, who somehow found this job listing not intended for you. Although there was a way out planned for you, I have a feeling that's not what you want. I have a feeling that you are right where you want to be. I am remaining as well. I am nearby. This place will not be remembered, and the memory of everything that started this can finally begin to fade away, as the agony of every tragedy should. And to you monsters trapped in the corridors, be still, and give up your spirits. They don't belong to you. For most of you, I believe there is peace, and perhaps more, waiting for you after the smoke clears. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, friend. My daughter, if you can hear me, I knew you would return as well. It's in your nature to protect the innocent. I'm sorry that on that day, the day you were shut out and left to die, no one was there to lift you up into their arms, the way you lifted others into yours. And then, what became of you? I should have known you wouldn't be content to disappear. Not my daughter. I couldn't save you then, so let me save you now. It's time to rest, for you, and for those you have carried in your arms. This ends, for all of us, in communication.
So that's my coverage of what I recognize as the entire timeline of Five Nights at Freddy's, between the games and the lore. I want to say there is a very, very large possibility that I've gotten something or even multiple things wrong, and quite frankly, I do not care. I'm going to continue to live in ignorance, and I think that's something people can respect in this case. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, I hope the FNAF movie is awesome, and I hope you have a great day. I'll see you in the next one.